Hello everyone, this is Rabbi Tobin from B'nai Shalom, and we are here with Talmud Mondays. We are in Sanhedrin, chapter 4. We are on page... How far did we get? She didn't start from the beginning. I apologize. Okay. Yeah, that's not the beginning of the chapter. The chapter's like on 32. Be right back. Otherwise, you're just going to listen to me, and this stuff is complex. And you
What page did you say?
We don't have the page, that's why he went to the office. If you went to last night's leftovers from the breakfast, there's bagels, cream cheese, egg salad, tuna salad, white fish.
One bundle of holiday after another.
I was hungry.
Some new houses, some It was what?
Oh, what was the hotel? What was the hotel? Oh, where was it? What town? Oh, in Monticello. Not Concord,
I'm not one of those big, it's not, I mean, the first day
there's a hotel, the Pines.
We are, in fact, on 30B. Okay, so she's making copies. She's going to bring them in. We are Sanhedrin, page 32B1, which is not in front of you yet. Anybody with one of these devices, you should go to Safaria, which is written on the board behind me, safaria.org. And they're in their library. You should have this as an app anyways. If you have the opportunity, download the app. All Jewish texts are free on Safaria in English and Hebrew. So there's not a Jewish text that you're ever going to study that's not there for free. So download the free app, safaria.org, in the Play or Apple Store. And then, or you can go to it through your browser on www.safaria.org, and you choose Library, Talmud, Seder Nezikin, Sanhedrin, and then on the top of the page, you'll see a page with a little gray down arrow. You touch the down arrow, and it opens up all of the chapters and pages. Chapter 4, page 32B. So that's Safari.org. And you're going to go to Library, Talmud, Nezikin, Sanhedrin, chapter 4, 32B. That's the tree. You're going to go to here, choose that, choose that, choose that, choose that, choose that, choose that.
Didn't you get words between Talmud and Nezikim originally?
No, well, no. That should be fine. Okay, and that'll get you to where we are. 32B.
34.
No, 32.
No, we're not.
in those.
Ignore this. We'll get to it in September.
See you in September.
Okay.
32.
No, Evelyn,
You do not
we're
have the
using that
papers.
book.
If you have last,
Return it. We're not using
hang on,
it.
hang on. You have last week's
Yes.
papers? If you have last week's papers, go to 32B.
That's what I'm looking
If you have last week's papers, go to 32B. Because last week I photocopied what I thought would be the beginning of the chapter, and then
doesn't have,
we are a well-oiled machine.
It doesn't have page numbers, and what happened to the pages we returned last week there?
I don't have them in front of me, which is the only relevant piece of information. How, why, what? We'll let the FBI and the Department of Justice and everyone else with their conspiracy theories about what happened to the papers come and solve it for us.
I mean, normally I turned them in.
Thank you for getting that.
so it's 32.
I did it.
32
I am
B1,
Spartacus.
32B1.
32B1. You have it?
There's no page numbers.
It
so
doesn't,
you
it
can't
doesn't
tell.
have the page number, so it's
Okay. All right. So I'll give you a little summary. We had a mess last week where people were comparing our Mishnah to a Baraita or two. And the Mishnah was saying whether or not you needed to have Chakira and Drisha, whether you had to have the boilerplate verification of the facts of the case or the additional commentaries. And we were surprised to find that there was Baraita that said that even when they were wrong about the Chakira, the basic facts of the case, as far as date, time, place, that their testimony was still going to stand up. And that was being used against our current Mishnah. And since you can't say our Mishnah is wrong, and you can't say a Baraita is wrong, the only solution when they do this is to say the cases are different, the context is different. The rabbi who was talking there would have said our Mishnah in our case, but was saying that ruling because it's different. So the differences could be the level of the case, the type of the case. One of the suggestions was that our case is simple money matters, and that case was dealing with fines or punishments, right? You could also imagine them saying that it's money matters as opposed to land money matters, which could be two entirely different scenarios, right? So they all of that was happening. We finished, I believe, with we did a Rava and a Rav Papa. Rava had said that our Mishnah here, monetary law requires inquiry and interrogation, and it states that with regard to the laws of fines, not standard money cases. So Rava was of the opinion that our Mishnah was not talking about money cases, even though it says Dinei Mamonot. Instead, it's talking about fines. That was Rava's opinion. The other sources, including the Mishnah that they brought from somewhere else, the somewhere else, by the way, is Tractate Shvi'it. So they brought a Mishnah from somewhere else which contradicted our Mishnah. And he was saying the Mishnah over there in Shvi'it, which does not require the Chakira and the Derisha, is stated with regard to cases of admissions and loans, in which there is cause to relax the procedures of deliberation as explained. Which, remember, they said it could scare off the creditors if you had these possibly high levels of admission. So they allowed lower levels of testimony to enforce the loan, to make sure that the credit market stayed fluid and people had access to credit. That was basically the argument about the Mishnah in Shvi'it. So they were very strict in our Mishnah, according to Rava, because it was punishments, but they were very loose in the Mishnah in Shvi'it, and the two Mishnahs do seem to be in contradiction, but they're not, because they're talking about different kinds of financial matters. Rav Papa said, this and that, meaning our Mishnah and those sources, all right, so this is Rav Papa against Rava, are stated with regard to admissions and loans. So then he's got to explain why are they different? Why do they contradict each other? They're talking about the same case. And the distinction between them is that our Mishnah here, which rules that monetary law requires Akira and Drisha, is stated with regard to a possibly fraudulent trial. You remember that? He said it sounds shifty. It sounds suspicious. Something, I smell something fishy here. So if you're in a situation where it seems like there's a likelihood that something fraudulent is happening, then they said in our Mishnah here, you have to be very strict. But in general, when we're dealing with these things, we can be loose because you have 1,000 of these cases come before the court and everything is simply routine. Nobody's fighting, nobody's lying, it's a normal case, we're just going to rubber stamp it. And if the witnesses are schwach, they're weak, fine, they're weak. But everyone knows what's going on. Don't be a bean counter. Don't be a stickler and gum up the works, basically. If you smell something, be a stickler. All right? Which, from a point of view, sounds good, but from the point of view of policy and jurisprudence, it certainly sounds like an invitation to all kinds of subjectivity on the part of the court, which we would generally not want. So, with regard to a fraudulent trial, where the court suspects one party attempting to defraud the other party, there, which is in the Baraita and in the Mishnah in Tractate Shvi'it, which do not require Chakira and Drisha, the ruling is stated with regard to a trial that does not seem fraudulent. Okay? So he just separates them off. He says the strict case, they smell a rat, and in the not strict cases, they don't smell a rat, and all the cases are the same. Fine. That was Rav Papa. So Rava and Rav Papa disagree completely about the disagreement. They don't disagree that there is a disagreement, but they disagree about the disagreement. Did I just confuse you with that last line?
Yes.
So you can ignore me if it made sense, enjoy it, and if it didn't, go on. All right, 32b1. Excellent. Pass them down. Take one, pass it down. Thanks God. If you look on the left, you'll see Rava, and on the left, you'll see Rav Papa, and then we're going to get Reish Lakish. Okay?
Okay.
Reish Lakish is going to take that difference of opinion about being strict and not strict, and he's going to attach it to Torah verses. So, do you need another? You good? Okay. So, on the right side, 32b1, put the staple in the top left corner. Right there on that front page, 32b1. So, Kiddur Reish Lakish, in accordance with Reish Lakish, the Reish Lakish Rame, Reish Lakish posed a contradiction from what? From two different Torah verses. Ketiv, B'tzedek tishpot amitecha, it is written with righteousness, and it only says the word tzedek once. You should judge your fellow. Uchetiv, and it's written elsewhere, tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice you shall pursue. Ha-ketzad, so how is it understood? Kan bedin merume, here in the tzedek, it's with a fraudulent din, a fraudulent case, and kan bedin she'ein merume, and the place in the verse that only has one tzedek, that's where the not fraudulent is. Ooh. So how can you have two Mishnahs that teach the opposite for a subjective difference in the litigants? The only way you can do that is the Torah told you to. So the Torah told you by saying tzedek you should judge, and tzedek you should judge. One tzedek means a normal case, and tzedek means it's fishy and you need to apply an extra level of tzedek.
The other way around.
Therefore, tzedek is fraudulent. Okay?
Now, why is it fraudulent? Because of the witnesses that they don't?
The judges suspect that somebody is lying, right? I mean, if people come to me, like, I just bought a house, okay? I had a lawyer, they had a lawyer, right? And there was a closing agent, and it had to get filed with the court. When it went to get filed with the court could look at the paper and say, this doesn't look right to me. Now they're going to do Hakira and Darisha. They're going to go and check the facts. They're going to ask some questions. They want some more explanations. But they do like 1,000 of these sales a month in this court. So the paperwork comes through and it looks normal. They're just going to go through. And so somebody didn't cross their T in the signature. Somebody's address is incomplete. Fine. They're just going to go on. It looks fine. Just do it. Right? You're allowed to do that because the Torah has a verse where you shall judge your friend with simple justice. Torah also has a verse that you should be tzedek. You should really make sure everything is right on a high level of justice. So that's for when you smell a rat. So you're allowed to have two different ways of requiring evidence based on how you smell the case. And the only way you can treat people differently, because someone's going to have to bring in the verse mishpat echad yeh lechem, you shall have only one standard of justice for everybody, right? Remember that favorite verse? Where is that, right? Well, the only way you could possibly get around the fact that you're supposed to have a single standard of justice is if the Torah told you where you can have two different standards of justice. Is that what the Torah is saying in those verses? No. Is that Reish Lakish is solving the contradiction between the two Baratas?
Yes.
Yes. Okay? So that's what Reish Lakish is saying. Yes.
About all cases that are in the middle. And second of all, what if you're dealing with people with unsavory background, who may be suspicious to start, even though the people work like
Yeah. So the problem with Reish Lakish is he doesn't tell us by what standard things are fishy, right? So if you have a gray zone where you're not, it's doubtfully fishy. Do you go with it's doubtfully fishy, so you be lenient, or it's doubtfully fishy, so you could be strict? So we don't know where the gray zone is in the middle. And second, we don't know if fishy could be because, you know, the Godfather's son is here with a shifty real estate license again. You know, it's some deal where, you know, we've had this guy prosecuted for fake deals that look like this 10 times, right? I have a serial criminal agent in front of me, right? But his paperwork looks fine this time, right? Am I allowed to consider that a tzedek tirdov, or do I have to do that b'tzedek, right? Tishbot et amitecha. So Reish Lakish doesn't help us out. Okay? All right. Now, so we had a pause, and Rav Ashi said, is everyone okay so far at that?
Yeah.
That's a minor miracle in and of itself.
Yeah.
Okay? Text? Very good. Okay.
Sounds like politics and stuff, really.
That's all right. All rooms are the right room. If you're in a room, it's a good place. Rav Ashi Amar, matnitin b'deshani. So he says, or kiddeshani, right? He says the contradiction between the Tannaitic statements of the Mishnah and the Baraita are the way we answered previously. That is a completely unhelpful standard. So Rav, I just want to admit that because this is where we left off last time.
Right.
Rav Ashi is the last Amora of the Gemara. So Rav Ashi has heard everybody else's opinion. Rava has probably heard everybody else's opinion. Rav Papa, maybe. Reish Lakish may or may not have heard of Papa and Rava. I think he was earlier, so he couldn't have known their opinions. But his opinion was put third here, right? Mm-hmm. So you might think it's chronological, but it's not. The editor put them in this order because Papa is one standard. It makes sense as a response to Rava, who's not anticipating anyone else's point of view. And Reish Lakish has a nice double standard interpretation of verses, which can be used to resolve Rav Papa and Rava. But they really are three entirely different approaches to this question, which is two Mishnahs are in contradiction with each other. They contradict each other. How can you have Mishnahs contradicting each other? So Rav Ashi's answer is, they're all right. You can answer according to any of these opinions, which is a very flexible point of view, almost to the point of not having a point of view. Right? So how does he do this? So he says the Tannaitic statements are like we answered, all the answers. The verses cited by Reish Lakish, Achad Ladin ve'Achad L'Shara, are not about what you think it is in the context of Rav Papa. In fact, they are about the concept of justice and compromise. So one verse, tzedek, is saying you shall pursue din, and tzedek, you shall justly judge your friend, which isn't overemphasizing the word justice, but justly, means you should find a compromise when you're dealing with these things, right? So sometimes you're going to try and solve a situation with your friend by compromising, and sometimes you're going to go after the strict ruling of a law. And now, yep.
So I'm thinking that tzedek means going one correct, one two-step, whereas tzedek says, well, both are right, so we have to go both.
Opposite. Tzedek, only one justice means justly you shall do it. It doesn't mean there's only one interpretation. Quite the contrary. It means that you shouldn't hold yourself to a high, strict standard of interpretation of justice. I want justice to be done, right? You shall justly deal with your fellow. Deal with
Some compromise.
more compromise. That's what he's saying here. So tzedek is emphasis. Remember, in the Torah, when you repeat a verb once after the other, it raises the emphasis of the feeling of that word. Mot yumat, surely he shall be killed. Not he will die, not he will be killed. He shall surely be killed. Im shamoa tishme'un. If you shall
Listen.
heed my words, not just listen. I got an earbud in one side and a phone in the other. Yeah, I'm listening. But if you're really tuned in, listening, paying attention, and you're going to do whatever this person says, that's shamoa tishme'un. You shall surely hear. You shall surely heed, right? So tzedek is that. It's amplifying the insistence on justice, which would be a strict thing. Could they have done a drasha to make it the other? Sure. They didn't. That's not what they mean. And I'm trying to help you because now we're going to get the story of the boats and the camels, and we're going to have to figure out where people are in their point of view. All right? So Rav Ashi also knows stories. So he's going to bring a baraita. Tzedek tirdof. And this is one of those aggravating moments where you realize the Stam has been playing with us all along. The only reason he had to flesh out all these different points of view is because he's going to talk about something totally different that uses the verse of Reish Lakish.
Okay.
All right? He's not really going to solve the fact that there's a contradiction between the Mishnah here and the Mishnah in Shvi'it.
That they're gonna leave.
At this moment, it's being left behind. Instead, since we're talking about tzedek, I've got a baraita that tells a story. So here we go. All right, tzedek. All right, it is taught in a baraita. Tzedek tirdof, Torah verse. Justice, you shall pursue. So why does it say tzedek? Ready? Echad ladin ve'echad lifshara. Oh, Reish Lakish didn't make it up. It's from a baraita. Couldn't you have told us that to begin with, Mr. Stam? No, because he's playing with us. All right, Ketzai. So how can it be tzedek? Shtei sfinot ovrot banahar. Two boats are passing on a river. Now, your interlocutor here from the Schottenstein version of the Talmud has posited the case as the boats are passing each other in opposite direction. This is oncoming traffic. The boats are in a river, not a lake, so there's limited amount of space. And, how many of you sail? You sail? Drive a motorboat? Anybody have a boating license? Suburbanites.
Rag seller. I'm a rag seller.
What's that?
I'm a rag seller.
Okay, so on the front of a boat, you have a red light and a green light. When you see a boat coming towards you, which side is the red and which side is the green? Is on the right or your right? Looking at
The
them.
red is on their right.
Correct. And the green is on their left. So as you look at it, the red is on the left and the green is on the right. Which side of that boat are you supposed to pass them on?
Green.
The boat on your right has a right of way.
Okay. The boat on your right has the right of way because the boat on your right has a red light facing you. The boat on your left has a green light facing you. Right? The whole point of that system is it creates a way by which boats are supposed to safely know from a distance which side they're supposed to pass on. Otherwise, they do this, trying to figure out not to run into each other, and they smash.
Right.
Because there's no double yellow line in the water. Right? So if this would be like if there were no double yellow lines, but cars had a red headlight and a green headlight. What's the problem with that? Motorcycles.
One white light.
Which is a bullseye, right? So this is the way we figured out how boats should pass. They didn't have red lights and green lights on their boats. They had two boats coming at each other.
So
And
which side do you pass on? The green or the red?
Green.
You pass on the green side. Green go, red stop. Don't go red, go green, right? That's the basic thing. The other rule, if you're ever going to get into boating, is wind power always has right of way over motor power, regardless of direction or circumstance. The sailboat has right of way over a cargo container. right? Or a little bass fishing boat.
It was less maneuverable.
The sailboat always has the right of way. Aircraft, a glider has right of way over. Yeah.
The same thing with the lights.
Oh, the lights are the same. Right, because it was based on the shipping industry. Aircrafts were based on naval construction and naval law to start. That's why they're called airships. Anyways, I love all the little pieces of trivia stuck in my head.
Same with the
You should see me on Jeopardy. It's really a lot of fun.
Same way with the red buoys that are in the water.
Correct, the red buoys, red right
Right
returning,
return.
and when you,
Red right
there's
return.
also in the channel on the shore, if you look up, there's two markers that you have to line up, one far behind the other that tells you in the middle of the channel, and they have reds and greens. Yes. It's all fun.
You're a boater?
I'm a boater. I have a boating license. Did you know that in New Jersey, you need a boat to be on a closed lake, but not the ocean? You do not need a license to drive a boat in the ocean in New Jersey waters, but you need one on a pond.
That's Jersey law.
That's right. And you have to take an extensive course and be approved by the state police. And that's, if you're on a pond, you need a license, but if you're like going in and out of Atlantic City, you don't.
Oh, but that's because there's new bad accidents and
I don't know. Anyways, here we go. So the boat. So this the Baraita, and the fact that you have a story for halakha and a Baraita is remarkable. You don't usually have stories in Baraitot like this. Certainly not in a Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi doesn't seem to have liked to include stories in Mishnah.
And why would he pick ships passing?
Oh, if you don't like ships, he's about to talk about camels.
Yeah.
Oh, camels I can see. but not
Oh, well,
ships.
good. All right.
But Jews were merchants, so they were going.
Here we go. Shtei svinot ovrot banahar. Two boats are passing in a river. And so the editor of the Schottenstein has told you that it's two coming at each other. What's the other possibility? One's overtaking another. Okay, those are both logically possible with the language of the Baraita. All right, so he's got them coming at each other. And they encounter each other. Ufag'u ze bazeh. And they encounter each other really means they come in contact. Im ovrot shteihem tov ot. If both try and pass at the same time, they will sink. Bezeh achar zeh shteihem ovrot. But if one goes after the other, they will pass in peace. Okay? That's case number 1. Case number 10. V'chein, similarly, shnei gemalim shahayu olim b'ma'alot beit choron. Two camels going up the notoriously dangerous narrow ascent of Beit Horon. Now, aside, freeze. Beit Horon is a very interesting place, and it actually might have something to do in the high holiday liturgy of the concept of the image of God as a shepherd bringing the flock before him one by one. Beit Chorin or Ben Chorin is in there, and it's translated often as free people, but a slight emendation of the text makes it Beit Choron, meaning he brings each one of us in front of him on the narrow precipice path at which he can protect us or judge us. And only with his staff do we navigate that precipice safely. That David Golinkin wrote an article on this about 10 years ago, and I think he's absolutely right, that the liturgy of us passing as sheep under God's staff is meant to be this, Beit Choron, from the Talmudic concept of the camels on the narrow path. All right, just, you'll remember, you'll be sitting there in shul and you go, oh, I remember that. V'chein shnei gemal, and you'll try and tell someone next to you and you'll get shushed. V'chein shnei gemalim shehayu olim b'ma'alot Beit Choron. Two camels. Sheep are bad enough. These are camels trying to get by on this road. Okay? Ufag'u ze b'zeh, and they encounter one another, they bump. Im alu shnehem noflim. If they both try, they'll both get knocked off the cliff. B'zeh achar zeh shnehem olim. But if they take turns, they will both go safely. Now, are they going the opposite direction or the same direction? I know that the editor of the Shalom made that opposite here, like the boats. The boats make sense opposite. opposite. The camels only make sense with one trying to push past the other. Because if they're coming north, up and down, there's going to be nowhere to go. It's not like they can take turns. The path is narrow. Right? Taking turns doesn't make it more possible. A boat can pull over, maybe, but the Beit Horon image doesn't look good
Well,
to
it
me.
says imolu shnehem, if both of them are going
Up.
up. Yeah.
Right, as opposed to the boats where it says ovrim, one passes the other. So right, so this is olim instead of ovrim. So I think they're going the same direction, but that's just neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. The point is they have to take turns, otherwise they both die. Ha-ketzad. So how should it be resolved? Remember, we're trying to deal with the verse tzedek tzedek tirdof, right? Te'una u'she'ena te'una. If it is loaded and not loaded, in other words, one of the boats is fully laden, or one of the camels is under a heavy burden, and the other one is light, empty of burden, right? Tidache she'ena te'una mipnei te'una. The unloaded one should be pushed aside for the loaded one. Krova v'she'ena krova, or the one that is close to its destination and that is not close to its destination. Tidache krova mipnei she'ena krova. The one closer to its destination should give way to the one that still has a farther journey to go.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This is what they're saying. So there's two different ways to interpret how you know which one is supposed to go first. So we've established you're not going to both charge to the spot because you're both going to die. So how do you decide? Maybe it's the one that's fully loaded that has to move aside. Does it move aside or not move aside? Not loaded moves aside, and loaded goes through, which makes sense because loaded is harder to slow or to stop, and loaded is worth more. You have more to lose if this one is put in danger, right? There's a couple of good ways to think about that. Then you have closer or not closer to the destination. The one that's closer to the destination is less likely to lose. It's almost home free. The one that has farther to go is more likely to lose, and so you want to err on the side of that. So in both cases, you have the one that is more likely to lose being allowed to go first. The one with the farther journey or the one with more merchandise on it. Both of those are higher risk of loss. So they're being allowed to go first. Yes?
Yeah, but that one, the camel that's loaded will be slow.
Okay.
Just hold up the one behind it indefinitely.
So maybe they're right, and the camels, and maybe they're going opposite directions, and there's a little spot you can hide. Okay, I mean, I can make up a scenario to make all problems go away. They say to each other, they're yelling at each other. Get out of my way! I've got 5 miles to go. Get out of my way! My wife is waiting. I got to be there in 10 minutes, or I'm dead. Right? These are truck drivers. They will be communicating. Right? Communication is not their problem. The Balagola has something to say. When was the last time you had a taxi driver who didn't talk? They talk. Okay.
Uber talks.
Hayushtehem krovot v'shtehem rechokot. But, however, if they were both equidistant, right? Hatel pshara b'nehem, you need to arrange a compromise for them, u'ma'alot sechar zo lazo, and compensate one for the other.
Brother.
So the word pshara comes in here, meaning a compromise. So here now another element has been raised.
Money?
Getting paid for arriving on time. Or the goods might be perishable, and they need to arrive or they're no good. Or they might have a deadline. If my etrogim show up after sunset, I can't sell them. Ready to go? Your ride's here.
Excuse me.
By all means. So I will see you in 4 weeks. We're off for the next 2 and Labor Day Monday.
I got it.
Okay?
This is the last one.
Until September 9th. Okay? So if there's some time delay that causes a loss, then you make a deal. The person goes first, the person goes second, and they split the loss. What's very interesting is you might actually have the other side, where the person who goes first makes a higher profit, the other person doesn't make a loss. Should they split the profit? I would say the spirit of the pshara, of the compromise, would say yes, but that's not what they're talking about. Everything here seems to be in the assumption of something bad might happen. Right? The ships are going to sink, the camels are going to die, the value of the shipment will be lost. Okay? It's all threat, threat, threat. Okay? So that's the Baraita. Did the Baraita tell you anything about Tzedek Tirdof? No. And that's really frustrating. Because the Baraita started with Tzedek Tirdof and said, what does it mean? And what it said was, sometimes you have to simply give way, and sometimes you need to come to a compromise. In other words, be flexible. Consider the case. Consider the situation. What is the context? What is the risk? What is the reward? Tzedek Tirdof means you've got to figure it out on a case-by-case basis and take into account the risk and reward of both parties. And figure it out. In other words, I'm not going to give you a rule. The person who's closer always goes first. The person who's heavily laden always goes first. The camel, whatever it is. Okay? All right, figure it out. So now the Gemara cites a Baraita that expounds on the previous verse in yet another way. So what is the Stam doing? The Stam is saying, oh, it's Tzedek Tirdof. I got a lot of different Baraitas on that verse. Let's put them all in here. Okay? So now we're going to learn something else where they use Tzedek Tirdof. Tanu Rabbanan, sages taught in a Baraita, Tzedek Tirdof. Righteous, righteous, you shall pursue. Halech achar beit din yafeh. What Tzedek Tirdof means, you shall find the best court. How is it reading the verse that way? The tzedek of tzedek is what you should be looking for. The just of the just. In other words, the best of the best. The best court. So don't go to a lousy court, don't go to a local court, go to a famous court. Go to a court with rabbis who are well known and published and heads of yeshivas with lots of students, and you have to go to the best Beit Din you can. Achar Rabbi Eliezer LeLod. So in Lod, that means the court of Rabbi Eliezer. Achar Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai Livror Chayil. And in the town of Bror Chayil, you go to Yochanan ben Zakkai. Okay? Never mind. Since we mentioned Bror Chayil, Tana, there's another Braita taught that says, Kol Richaim Bivrone, the sound of a mill in Borne, Shavua Bain, the week of the sun, the week of the sun. Or Haner Bivror Chayil, and if you see the light of a candle in Bror Chayil, Mishte Sham. A feast is there, a feast is there. So there's this little rhyming, pithy ditty known in the rabbinic world that says, if you hear a mill in Borne, then it is the birth of a son, and there's a bris there. And if you see a candle in Bror Chayil, it means there's a chag that you can go and celebrate. Okay, since we heard something about Bror Chayil, I told you that. Now, let's go back. What does it mean to talk about a court? What does it mean, Tzedek Tirdof? So we just had a Braita that says, pursue the best court, which would seem to imply you get to choose your court. Right? Well, that's interesting. We've kind of talked about that in the last chapter. It hasn't come around yet, but here it is. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in yet another Baraita. All of these Tanaitic teachings did not make it into the Mishnah. I think you have a sense that it's with good reason they didn't make it in. Tzedek Tirdof, righteous, righteous, you shall pursue. Halech achar chachamim lishiva. That means you should go after sages of a yeshiva, of an academy. In other words, prominent sages from an established school of law. Achar Rabbi Eliezer Lod, which is Eliezer in Lod. It's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in Bror Chayil. It's Rabbi Yeshua in Peki'in. It's Rabban Gamliel in Yavna. It's Rabbi Akiva in Bnei Brak. it's Masya in Rome, and it's Hanania ben Tradion in Sichni, and it's Yossi in Sipuri, and it's Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera in Nitzivim, and it's Rabbi Yehoshua in the Gola, in Galut, outside of the land, which is understood there to be the yeshiva Pumbedita, and it's Rebbe in Beit Sharim, so it's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in Beit Sharim. Some of you were with me in Beit Sharim and Sipori, and you know that's the area Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote the Mishnah. And Achar Chachamim Lishkat HaGazit, and after the sages in the chamber of hewn stone. So this is from before everyone's gone from the land of Israel. This Baraita is naming the greatest courts in the land. So it's very interesting. We have a snapshot of where these great rabbis of the Mishnah age held sway in regional courts. So we have a Baraita telling people which court to go to in each of these different regions. Well, one's called a yeshiva and the others aren't, but there are rabbis and beit deans who are established in those places, so we can presume they're studying Torah and they have students there as well. Right? But this is also presuming that the temple has not been destroyed, because in the chamber of hewn stone, which is in the Temple Mount, there's a Sanhedrin, there's a Chachamim there. The sages are sitting there as a beit din. So this is pre-destruction. Pre-70, right? Which makes no sense because several of the people named like Rebbe didn't live for another 100 years. So how can you have the chamber of hewn stone at the same time you have Rebbe in Beit Sharim? So maybe it's not a snapshot in time. Maybe it's over the 200-year period of the Mishnah, these were the great courts. When these courts existed, that's where people should have gone.
What if it's far away from them?
Then you have to go to a local court. But if you have a choice, you should go to a good court.
And what about selecting your own judge?
That's chapter 3. Let's not go back there.
Oh.
Selecting your own judge, who's a qualified judge. I choose one, you choose one, they choose a third. That's a whole different rigmarole. We did that.
Now, these courts are how many judges?
You go to the chamber of hewn stone, that's the best of the best, but after 70 it doesn't exist. Right, so maybe this is not chronological, this is maybe saying in each of these times and places there's a preference of where you would have gone. Except for Rabbi Akiva is in Bnei Brak at the same time as the chamber of hewn stones. And it names them both. So I have to believe that it's if you're in Bnei Brak, you go there. If you're in Jerusalem, you go there. Because they're at the same time. If you're halfway in between the two, I guess, best of the best. If you're halfway between the two, you would default to Jerusalem? Maybe, I don't know. You have to figure out which one is the rule, yeah, best or best for you.
How
Okay.
many judges in these courts?
The original mission in the chapter told us how many judges there were in courts. Monetary cases was 3. Then you had capital cases had 23, right? All right. So, Dinei Mamonot. We have time for this? Sure. All right, 32b3. We're going to go back to our Mishnah. So all of that is over, right? Tzedek Tirdof is done. The machloket of Rava and Rav Papa and Reish Lakish is done. Rav Ashi's little Baraita that brought Tzedek Tirdof is done. The story of the camel and the ships is done. The location of the best beit dins in the world is done. We're going to go back to our Mishnah now, as the Gemara does when it's done with a topic, and it's going to pick up a new topic. So back in the Mishnah, Dinei Mamonot Potchim. There, remember, the monetary cases, you were allowed to open the testimony with either a hostile witness or a defense witness. Didn't matter. But with capital cases, you had to open with testimony in defense of the accused. Right? That was the way they started. Okay? Okay. Hacha amrinan laho. Oh, I'm sorry. Hechi amrinan. So what do we say about capital cases? Which the Gemara already told us. I mean, the Mishnah told us about, but they're going to ask the question. Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said, regarding capital cases, Hachi amrinan laho. This is what we tell the witnesses. Mi yemar kidika amritu. Who is to say it's the way you said? Right? So how are you going to do your drisha, your additional questions to the witnesses regarding a capital case? So one of the questions you have to ask them is, who's to say that that's how it happened? You have to prove. So you said it that way. Do you have proof? Right? You have to. You can't just tell me. You have to prove to me what you're telling me. Again, notice the approach to a capital case is constantly making it harder to convict someone to execution. Okay? So you're going to push these people harder. Yeah.
This is opposite than our system, it sounds like, because I think first the prosecution goes, and then the defense. Whereas here, it's the defense comes first.
Yes.
And then the prosecution.
Yes, the prosecution brings the case in our system because they're the one who have brought this person to court. Your Honor, we have brought this person before the court because he is accused of having done blankety blankety blank. Right? And our case will prove it in the following way, and we will bring the following kinds of witnesses and evidence. And they sit down. And then the defense stands up and says, hogwash, blah, 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 blah. And then they're off and running.
I think the only thing that coincides with this is the concept of innocence first. We supposedly assume.
Well, you're supposed to presume, in our system, it's innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. In their system, remember, there was a Mishnah that said you presume everybody is guilty when they come in, and you presume everybody is innocent once the case is done. Right? In other words, you don't hold grudges after, but you're going to, so that doesn't line up exactly. But the system is slighted in the opposite direction. The system is slighted to protect the person from a capital conviction. All right, Ula says. So, Amar le Ula. So Ula says to Rav Yehuda, Vaha chasminan laho? But, aren't we going to muzzle him? So the guy is going to say the case, and you're going to jump down his throat. The witness comes and he says, I saw him kill him, at high noon in the middle of the street of the OK Corral. All right? I saw it. And the first thing you're going to say is, well, that's what you say. How do we know that that's true? Right? So when the judge, after all their intimidating introductions, remember you had the thing last chapter about how do we scare the heck out of them before they testify. And one of the things you say is, do you know if you're wrong, you will be executed, etc. We've just scared the heck out of this guy. And then despite the fact, he said, I saw him kill him in the middle of the street at OK Corral at high noon. And then we come back at him and say, are you sure? How do we know it could be that way? Well, he's going to immediately think they don't believe me, they're going to kill me. So he might very well stop talking. Right? So that's a pretty good objection. But the Gemara is going to say, V'lasmu. So let him be muzzled. Milo Tanya. Wasn't it taught in the Baraita? Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer Omer, Masi'in et ha'edim mimakom lemakom. We move the witnesses from place to place. Kadei shetitaref datan v'yachzeru bahen. So that their minds will become unsettled and they will retract their testimony. Like we want witnesses to be unsettled. Right? What's the benefit of that? You take the witness and you take him over here, give me your testimony, and then you move him over here, give me your testimony. You walk him out into the middle of the street of the OK Corral and you say, give me your testimony. Is this where it happened? Is this what it looked like?
I'm not sure.
What's the benefit of that?
Scaring the hell out of them.
What about the doubt and what about the scaring? Yes, yes?
Without the judges.
You're looking for any discrepancy whatsoever. So if this testimony is not 100%, boy, is it going to come out, right? Second, you want them unsettled, right? You want them totally unsettled because the stakes are high. And if they come out with a clean testimony, I understand, Your Honor, and please don't think it bad of me, but I saw him do it right here. It's clear testimony. So you want to be Perry Mason. You want to drive into him on this. You want to try and trip him up. You want to ask him 3 different ways. You're going to go into him because you want to make sure that this testimony is real. Okay? So let him have a muzzle.
Anybody's gonna renege under that pressure.
Not necessarily. No, a good person also has an obligation to testify. We have that Torah verse. You shall not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor, and so forth. You have to testify. You're under a Torah command to. So, if the person is in any sense doubtful about their testimony, and they're going to stop talking under pressure, then you know what? They should stop talking, because the testimony isn't 100% sure of itself. That's what they're saying. It doesn't take into account psychology. You might have a person who simply wilts under pressure, psychologically, and under this kind of a pressure, they're going to stop saying what they know to be true. They're going to doubt themselves. They're going to be afraid of the court. They're going to start to say other things, you know. We know psychologically this is not likely to produce credible testimony. I'll go out on a political limb. Torture does not produce good information. Right? Because the whole point of the experience of being tortured is you get to a point where you will talk to make it stop. And the only way torture has any argument in its favor is, I'm going to make him say things that he wouldn't say if I weren't doing this to him. Meaning he's going to talk to me to make it stop. The reverse of that is, at that point psychologically, the person will say anything to make it stop. That's the whole point. They will now talk to make it stop. So if they're guilty, you'll get stuff, and if they're innocent, you'll get stuff. Which means your testimony is unreliable.
On the second witness.
Yep.